Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now, you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back again, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. We're privileged to have back again a guest, Colin Morgan, who was on the show. He's an attorney with Julian Gray Associates and specializes in some areas that many are not even aware of. So, Colin, first off, I thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me back.
Yeah, and maybe if you can explain to some of the people why we're here today, what topic we're covering, that some people that you know and I know run into over their years and just blindsided by it, didn't really expect it at all.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're here to talk about the government benefits plan known as medical assistance, also known as Medicaid. Medicaid, not to be confused with Medicare.
Right.
I think our government did us a big disservice by naming the two primary government-based medical programs, Medicare and Medicaid. It's kind of like stalagmites and stalactites.
Yeah, good point.
There's a basic, concept of medical assistance, and then there's also how to achieve it and what it can be deployed for. So I think that would be the primary focus, today's session.
Okay, now when we do that, we have people listening in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 50s, in their 80s. At what stage of life do you see people starting to have to listen to this show?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just like we talked about before the camera started rolling here, it's never too early. If you have assets that you would like to protect from exposure to these types of issues that bring about these benefits, it's never too early to plan. Now, I would say when you're looking at retirement, or if there's some type of diagnosis that might lead to long-term care. So medical assistance is a government benefits program that covers long-term skilled nursing care. So this is, your typical idea of what a nursing home is. It's the 24/7 care. An MPA that costs anywhere between $9,000 and $11,000 per month. So,
wow.
A lot of people have this misconception that medical assistance is for individuals who can't afford basic coverage. What it's truly for is a benefit for people who can't afford $120,000+ per year in medical expenses, and that covers most of us.
Yeah.
So, very important benefits program. Again, the health and the life event factors are what would trigger this. Am I retiring, or have I gotten a diagnosis like early onset dementia? Are we looking at things where I'm going to need long-term care in the future? That's when you really need to start planning.
Do you see this being an issue for? Like I know someone I heard of someone in their 30s got diagnosed with MS.
Sure.
And if they need types of care that the family member, if there is one, can't help them with anymore, or need more advanced types of care and have to go either to a facility for care or hire people in home.
Sure.
What are we talking about here?
Sure, you would certainly need to look at eventually applying for medical assistance in those instances as well.
Okay.
So age is certainly a factor in planning. That's the easy one, right? That's the one that we all kind of have in the back of our head at all times. However, you also have to be flexible to react to life circumstances.
Okay.
We've talked in other segments about catastrophic injuries and things like that. Those also cause the need for long-term skilled style nursing care.
Oh, okay.
And what you're also considering when you're looking at medical assistance planning is not just the individual who's impacted with whatever diagnosis or disease they're dealing with, but also their surrounding loved ones. I can't tell you how many times living caretaker parents, spouses, children also get sick because of the physical and emotional stress of being a 24-hour caregiver.
Okay.
So in a lot of instances, medical assistance actually alleviates that pressure as well as the financial pressure on the individual receiving the care.
Okay. So we're talking primarily then you would think of what everybody thinks about is if I need to go into a nursing home, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that means people that are normally in retirement would be the normal. If you go into any facility, that's who you're going to see there. So that's who should be thinking about it. But also then I think about, okay, we're kids and our parents might not be facing an issue or out of denial not want to ever face the issue or talk to you about it. But the kids that are listening that are in their 30s and 40s might also need to pay strict attention here because, hey, mom and dad might not get care. And we think they're covered under Medicare. We think they have their Medicare supplement policies. We think they have everything in place. And then we get whammied when we're in our 50s because our parent is 75, has to go into a nursing home. We might need to quit work. We don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We might be paying for the nursing home. Is that what we're talking about here?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And there's even there's law in the books in PA right now based on an old welfare law called filial responsibility. So basically, in the early 20th century, Pennsylvania said that certain individuals are responsible for the care and well-being of other individuals. So parents to children, spouse to spouse, children to parents, and so on and so forth. So from this law came a really damaging case for our clients. It's called the Pittas case, Pittas. Basically, and not to get too far into the legal jargon of all this, what came out of this case, this was in 2012, was that a child or children can be held liable for unpaid nursing home expenses of a parent. So, when that law came out and the word got out that this was happening, our client base shifted from from purely an elder-based, clientele to also their children are calling us and saying, what can we do to protect ourselves and protect our parents?
That I didn't realize. I go to seminars and workshops all over the country, and I have a lot of clients all over the country. And I remember being in either Texas or California or Chicago or somewhere, and the issue came up with the children potentially being responsible for the parents' long-term care nursing home expenses. And I thought, wait a minute, the kids aren't liable for that. They can only get the parents' assets and not even all of them. And they stated that case. And they said the state that happened in was Pennsylvania. And I said, what? Pennsylvania? So talk a little bit more about that before we start on what to do, if you don't mind, because I do think most of you watching and most of you listening are just like I was. I don't have to worry about this.
Sure.
If it happens, somebody's going to take care of it. And they can't get me anyway. What do I have to do with my parents? Talk about that just a little bit before we start so we know why we have to pay attention now.
Sure. So, to give a basic overview of the case, some of the facts of the case, and, it's an old attorney adage that bad facts make bad laws. So you'll hear the facts of this case and you realize how wild all of this was. Is we had an individual who went into a skilled nursing facility, never paid a bill, was discharged from a skilled nursing facility, which is actually quite remarkable. Yeah. Generally, that's a destination, not a stop. And this person got on an airplane and flew to Greece, never to be heard from again. Enter estranged, well-to-do son, who was in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, as a resident. He was attached to the case, and he actually lost. So, again, based on this old rule that's on the books, this old statute that said certain people are responsible for other individuals, nursing homes have been able to bootstrap children into financial liability for unpaid bills. Okay. Now, it has to be, in my opinion, and it's our hope that this law gets at least, altered somewhat, because this was pretty wild stuff from a legal perspective. We need more cases to come in. However, right now, it's wide open. Skilled nursing facilities can sue kids for unpaid bills. Now, that's based on, you have to really drop the ball from a planning perspective. You have to essentially not plan for medical assistance, never pay your bills, and then completely drop the ball. So you can, a family can protect and solve for this by consulting with their financial planner, their elder care planning attorneys and related professionals to make sure they're doing what they need to do to, again, protect against this. So much of elder law and estate planning is, it takes a village, right? We need multiple people on board to make everything work properly, and that's both from within the family and from without. So kids should be involved in the process if at all possible.
Okay, so let's talk then about the process. The first stage I would think would be having a family meeting. A lot of parents won't do that. I know that. They're not going to talk about their finances.
Sure.
They're not going to talk to their kids about who gets what or anything, which makes this much more difficult. But to me, for all the families who will talk together, the kids might need to be bringing this up, saying, hey, Mom and Dad, we just want to make sure you're taken care of should anything happen to you. That would probably be the first thought, but what's their first step?
Their first step is to consult with an elder care planning attorney, if you, in my opinion, because we approach things from an educational perspective. The best meetings and consultations that I have with clients are when clients come in early. And I can say, okay, well, here's what we're looking at in the future. We don't know where this is going to land, but let's plan for as many of these factors and contingencies as we can right now while everything's very positive. This isn't emergency room law. This is let's plan ahead. That's the best outcome, best case scenario. At that point, we're normally executing legal documents that necessitate the kids come to the meeting. So Mom and Dad aren't calling the family meeting now at Thanksgiving. It's that boring lawyer, who wants to talk about laws and all kinds of stuff like that. So our clients can unload that burden onto us as professionals. We're used to it. We're professionals at having that discussion with families.
So they come in to meet with you, and then you begin to deal really and help them explain, here are all your different alternatives. If any of you need to go into a nursing home, and you might not.
Yeah.
So how do you do this?
So we look at, a top to bottom holistic approach to our planning. We look at a client's, current legal documents. We look at any medical diagnoses that they may have. And we also give, a cursory analysis of their finances, understanding that, we stay in our lane with these factors. And we look at everything from both a clinical and financial perspective. So if I have the clients who are stopping in on their way to, hit 9 rounds of golf after lunch, well, okay, that's a completely different plan than meeting with a spouse who's saying, my husband's in the hospital and they're saying he's going to have to go to rehabilitation afterward. So we have to be flexible as planners as well, and address each of those sets of circumstances.
So then what is planning? Because when I look at planning in the stages, me from the financial planning side, I see, okay, Mom and Dad, they're looking at maybe age 55 and they're saying, do we have enough to retire on? So that's the question I am going to get. How much do we need to retire on? Can we afford to retire? Do we pay off our mortgage? So those are the questions I get. So what you're saying is, it's beyond that. When I go to retirement planning, I have to factor in what's your monthly income need, and then I have to factor in what types of rates of return will you need to generate income? Will you need sustainable income from your assets? Do we have to protect your assets from volatility risks? How long does your money have to last? And does it need to grow with inflation? And now what you're telling me is I have to add into that discussion, oh, by the way, there may be a $9,000 to $11,000 monthly bill you might have to incur in retirement that we don't have the money for and we can't build into the budget?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's another, it's another issue. Yeah, exactly. But the good news is that we have the solution to that issue. And if a client comes in early enough, it's an easy solution. We do a lot of trust-based planning.
Help us out here.
Absolutely.
I'm sweating.
Well, let me alleviate some of that for you. So there are 2 styles of plans for medical assistance. Pre-plan and a crisis plan.
Okay.
Pre-plans, as the language might denote just in its title, is the much better outcome for the client.
Okay.
So the pre-plan is your 55-year-old client who's saying, thinking about retiring, what should I take care of? And you can do all of the complicated math and logistics of juggling all the things that you talk about. And I can say, okay, well, here's how we solve for expensive long-term medical costs. The primary plan that we employ for our pre-planning clients is trust-based medical assistance planning. We take static resources, real estate, long-term investments, things like that, and we place them into a trust that's compliant with medical assistance's rules, and then we just have a waiting period until everything is completely protected.
Okay.
The younger and healthier the client is, the better the outcome is. It's just like anything else from a financial or legal estate plan is the longer we have to let things grow and let things kind of marinate, for lack of a better term, the better the outcome's going to be for the client.
So what's involved then? We get to the point where they say, yes, I am concerned about if one of us should need to go into a nursing home later on.
Yeah.
What do we do then? Our assets are titled this way and they're held this way. We have IRAs, we have 401ks, we have regular bank accounts, we have regular stock and investment accounts or whatever. So where do we go from here? What are they not doing that they need to consider changing, and how do they make that? What changes do they make?
Sure. Well, they're normally if they have any estate plan, which, it surprises me how few people even have the basic documents, wills and powers and things like that. But if they're in that type of plan, they're not addressing each asset individually. We look at each asset from a usage perspective. What are they using it for? We look at it from a tax perspective. Is it tax burdened? Is it, an IRA style resource? And we address each asset individually. So, for example, the non-qualified long-term investments, those are the easiest ones. You just put them right into a trust and forget about them, just like you've always done.
Okay.
Real estate, also easy. IRAs, we have to do some more advanced planning techniques. We have to look at things like, life insurance. Can we employ that and protect that into a trust for medical assistance? Because, right now the IRS does not allow us to place an IRA into a trust, so, without liquidating it.
Right.
And if I told one of your clients to liquidate an enormous IRA to place into a trust, I would expect you to pull the plug on that plan immediately. So, there are other options. Looking at life insurance, looking at spousal protection. I go through this analysis with clients a lot. We'll go through 4 or 5 different hypotheticals, and they'll kind of say, all right, time out. We could talk about 100 different hypotheticals here, and the one's going to happen is the one we didn't talk about.
Okay.
So the trick is to get a relationship with an elder care planning attorney as early as possible and maintain that relationship over time. If anything changes, if there's a diagnosis, if you sold or bought a new home, a couple more grandkids come along, maybe somebody encountered a disability over the years, let us know and we can adjust your plan accordingly. We can set up a great foundational plan just like any good financial planner can do, and then we can adjust on the fly as things change or as things develop.
So the first thing when we look at age 55, once the person gets to age 65, we hit a magic age where most people apply for Medicare at age 65, not all, and then they're normally purchasing a Medicare supplement policy on top of Medicare at age 65.
Absolutely.
Sometimes whether they're still working or not.
Right.
So the first thing is you're saying this isn't a Medicare issue so much. You're saying it's not Medicare that's going to handle much of these expenses for you.
Absolutely, and that's a large misnomer with our client base is they, the answer when an individual's in a long-term care setting, the family says, well, Dad has Medicare, he'll be fine, they'll cover it.
And a Medicare supplement.
Yeah, and they've paid even the Medigap policies with which, by the way, just as a side note, get a Medigap, get a good Medigap because you'll save a lot of money in the long run. But we could do a whole other segment on that. But it's just not how Medicare works. Medicare covers acute medical needs. So in other words, if I have a stroke and I go to the hospital, Medicare is going to cover that. Now, if I've been in the hospital for 3 days, not under observation, if I've actually been admitted to the hospital for 3 days, which is a trick the hospitals try to do, Medicare will cover my rehabilitation as well. Now, Medicare will tell you, hey, you have 100 days. We're going to cover those 100 days.
Okay. Which is only 3 months.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean,
100 days sounds like, I'm good.
Oh, yeah, 100.
3 months, that's not so good.
No, and to be quite honest, generally Medicare only covers about 21 days. So they'll tell you 100, and then they will immediately try to kick you off when you hit around 20 days. So you really have to fight and continue to advocate for your family members when they're in these processes. But honestly, if you haven't done planning prior to one of these acute Medicaid or medical events, you need to do Medicaid planning immediately.
And here's an issue with that. So we think Medicare, and we think that's all we could buy, right? And it is.
Right.
So we buy from the government plans, the Medicare and the Medicare supplement. We get on board with all of that. And then if something happens and we need to go, we fell in our house, let's say, or maybe it's an Alzheimer's or dementia. It wasn't a hospital stay. But it comes to the point where the family recognizes at the home is not the safest environment for this person, let's say, or for the caregiver, because it's 24/7. So then they go into a nursing home, and you're saying Medicare applies there. Are there even loopholes that we're not talking about that they cannot pay? Like I've heard, well, they'll only pay for skilled nursing care, and they won't pay for custodial or intermediate or assisted living, or they won't pay for in-home care, only skilled care. And so get into that just a little bit if you don't mind.
Well, yeah, and Medicare only covers skilled nursing rehabilitation. Nothing else after the hospital stay.
The word rehabilitation's
a rehab facility essentially. So if you have that acute medical
I didn't
event
know that.
and
So
you
they won't cover a skilled nursing home. Right. They will cover a skilled nursing home, a rehab nursing home, like a kind of a.
And it's confusing because they're normally the same place.
I see.
So the Medicare, the rehab beds are on the other side of the hall from the long-term care beds. So long-term care is essentially the medical notion that, hey, this is where we are now.
Okay.
This isn't rehabilitating to get back home, to get back onto our feet. This is our new normal. So long-term care is not covered by Medicare.
Okay.
Long-term care can be covered by Medicaid as long as an individual is financially eligible. But just to back up, because you were asking about different care settings, Medicaid, neither Medicaid nor Medicare cover personal care homes, assisted living facilities, or independent living communities.
Yeah,
so those are all off the table.
Everybody, I don't mean to say where everybody is, but that's where everybody I know
and
is.
At least that's where you start too.
Yeah.
You get the best outcomes if you work through that type of process. So you start when you're healthy in an independent living community, and that's good. And then as health needs dictate, you can move into assisted living or personal care. Mm-hmm. And an acute medical event's very traumatic for the individual as well as the family. Mm-hmm. And the medical outcomes are generally not as good. So you're paying out of pocket for those pretty much one way or another. Mm-hmm. Now we are looking at from a government perspective, Medicaid dollars being allocated to assisted living facilities, but like with many things with government benefits, we're in a constant state of flux. Who's governor? Who's Congress being run by? Who's in the White House? Okay. Those types of things really govern this. So right now, I wouldn't rely on that for the short or probably even long term right now. Okay. So really, what we're looking at is paying out of pocket for the lighter medical care settings, and then as soon as skilled nursing becomes available or necessary, now we're really looking at a Medicaid-style plan. One caveat, and an important caveat, is you can, in limited instances, also get Medicaid to cover some modicum of in-home care if you're in need of skilled nursing at home.
I see.
That's called the PDA waiver program. We're seeing more and more clients become eligible for and accessing those benefits programs as well.
Okay, so we're actually having a problem then, because a majority of the people that I know, not all, that have run into this situation over the past 20 and 30 years started at the personal care level, actually started at home, a lot of them, and then at the personal care level where they needed help with just making sure they were taking all their medicines. They were missing medicines, or maybe a fear of slipping and falling in the bathtub and things like that. And that was all considered personal care.
Mm-hmm.
None of these programs will cover that, you're saying.
No, you need to really plan ahead from a financial perspective and a legal perspective. So, as an estate planning attorney, that's the umbrella that, elder law rests under. We used to just look at, well, how do we make sure a person's estate is managed properly after their passing? With all the stuff that we're talking about today, the real issue became, how do we make sure that there's an estate left at that point, especially for a surviving spouse, and then also looking toward generations 2, 3, and beyond.
Right. And even if someone has a handicapped child or something like
Sure.
that, they have someone who's truly dependent on their assets, maybe for life.
Oh, absolutely,
You know.
absolutely. And we see, again, and to me, it's a very positive thing, but it brings about considerations is, we live in an environment where adult disabled children are, outliving their parents at a much more prevalent rate, which is wonderful. But you get parents who are realizing this and saying, oh my gosh, what do we do now?
Yeah.
We have to plan to make sure. So, what I preach to my clients all the time is the earlier you can come in, the earlier you can start looking at these things, the more options you're going to have and the better outcomes you're going to have.
So how do people get in touch with you if they want a consultation and they want to figure out, hey, we didn't realize we were so widely exposed that all of our assets are exposed to this potential risk?
Sure. So we offer no-risk consultations. If you do not decide to hire us, it does not cost you anything. All you need to do is find us. The best way to find us is our website, grayelderlaw.com. You can see all of our attorney bios, you can see all of our experience, read our newsletter, and call for a consultation. We're right on Green Tree Road, right across from the Olive Garden. So if you need lunch before or something, and we try to set up a very open and easy environment for our clients. This is not your typical law firm type experience. And again, we look at everything holistically, and it's no obligation. It's all about educating and being available and accessibility.
Well, I appreciate your coming in. I'd like to see if you could stay. We'll do another segment
Certainly.
next week because I'd like to dig into this. Okay, we've thought about this for a week, hit us over the head. We think we might have this issue either with ourselves or our parents.
Sure.
What do we do? How does this planning work? And what really would be involved? Would that be okay if we
Absolutely.
do
I would love to. Thank you.
that? Okay. Well, everyone, I appreciate your tuning in to another edition of All Things Financial. We'll be back again next week.